Hey everybody, today's topic is going to be the MCU and where do they go from here? So, as we all know, the whole Jonathan Major situation didn't really turn out well. He was found guilty of a couple things, I think harassment and assault, and he was kind of slated to be their big villain, as King the Conqueror. And I quite liked him in Ant-Man 3. That movie has got like terrible reviews from critics saying that it's like so awful and it's just the worst MCU movie ever. But that's on Rotten Tomatoes. I don't believe you can really take Rotten Tomatoes seriously, especially after they give Thor Dumb and Dumber. I want to trademark that phrase, by the way, because I've used it so much. Um, I wanna trademark that phrase for real. Thor Dumb and Dumber. But they gave Thor Dumb and Dumber like a 63. So they're saying that like it's a great film, like it's better than Ant-Man 3. And I have to ponder like what type of drugs these critics are smoking. Like is it the powder? Is it are they injecting things into their arms? I don't know. Is it fentanyl? I have no idea, but you just can't watch Thor Dumb and Dumber and then watch Ant-Man 3 and say, oh wow, Thor Dumb and Dumber was leagues ahead of Ant-Man. It's such a good movie. I don't believe that. But anyway, where does Marvel go from here? Because he was the big villain. Now Kang is out. They got to figure out, okay, what are we going to do moving forward? I think they pushed some things back. The Marvels didn't really do as well as they hoped it was going to do. They're kind of in like an identity crisis right now, meaning like they don't have any central figures that are kind of like prominent lead characters in the MCU. Whereas, starting from Iron Man and all the way up until the end game, you had Tony Stark and Chris Evans, Captain America. So basically, Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man and Chris Evans, Captain America, which were kind of like the glue holding the MCU together. And all the support characters were really good during the Infinity Saga. Especially with those original six. Bruce Banner was good up until, I guess he was pretty good up until Ragnarok. He was really good. Black Widow was a great support character. War Machine was good. Falcon, I love Falcon. And Hawkeye was a good character. It's kind of sad he's the only Avenger that didn't get his own solo film, but they make up for it because he gets his own series and no one else does. So that's pretty cool. But I think one thing they should have done to kind of reinvigorate the fan base, after the end game was, I think, introducing the Fantastic Four and Ant-Man 3 would have been, I think that would have gotten people really excited, honestly. This was my theory. I thought that they were going to be in that film as just like kind of not just like a pointless, useless cameo, kind of like they did in like the Doctor Strange 2 film. But I think it would have been cool if Kang was actually holding them in his prison, where he found his daughter, Cassie. There could have been like these big four containment units where, the Fantastic Four were there, held by Kang. And, there could have been some scenes where, Reed Richards is talking to Scott and he's like, I'm an explorer just like you and Hank Pym, but upon coming here to the quantum realm, we were ambushed by Kang and he trapped us here. I think they could have done something really cool with that, honestly. And I think that would have gotten people really interested in like this next phase of what they are doing is the multiverse saga now, right? And the Fantastic Four are explorers at heart. They're always exploring different dimensions, making new scientific discoveries. But the key is Reed Richards, right? He is the most important member of the Fantastic Four, and they're all great characters. I love Sue, I love Ben, I love Johnny. It's just I love the chemistry between the team because they're kind of not just like a superhero team. They're not like just together when they're out fighting crime. Like they're like a real family. So I really like the Fantastic Four. I think that should have been the focus. I think Marvel just kind of got away from putting those putting those really prominent characters out there and kind of building the franchise kind of around them. Like how they did with, in the beginning with Iron Man. So they're kind of like in an identity crisis now. They don't have a clear direction, which I gotta commend them up until the Infinity Saga, up until the end game. They had a very clear vision of how they wanted it. It was so meticulous the way it was planned out, how they wanted it to go. Whereas now, I don't think they have that vision of where they want it to go. And, you kind of need that because, overall, their films aren't bad. I rather like their films still. Um, I liked, even though Black Widow has nothing to do with like multiverse, I liked her film. I loved Shang-Chi. Black Panther 2 was really good. I was pleasantly surprised that Black Panther 2 was that good. I really liked Namor's story. They didn't take his traditional comic route and make him this really hard and brute, like very totalitarian type of ruler. Well, not that he's totalitarian, but he usually does like to look out for his people. But they didn't really take that route for him in Black Panther 2, which I think is okay because I think they didn't want him to seem too similar. They didn't want his kingdom to seem like too similar to Aquaman's kingdom, so they didn't call it Atlantis. He kind of had like a different origin story, but overall he did look out for his people like he does in other TV shows and comics and other media that Namor is in. So I mean, as long as his character traits are the same, change his origin up, it's not a big deal, honestly. For, I mean, maybe if you're like a stickler for the comics and you're, I guess, what they consider like a toxic fan, you may say, oh, that's not really Namor. But, I mean, personally, I thought I thought he was great. I loved Black Panther 2. I liked Eternals. You guys say what you will about Eternals, but some really good themes that were explored in that movie. And honestly, I liked mostly everything that came out after Endgame. Even Guardians 3 wasn't terrible. Guardians 3 was like maybe like a 5 or 6 out of 10, but it wasn't a bad movie. I think it's just lacking that cohesion that made the Infinity Saga great because these films on their own aren't bad at all. And then, of course, you have the heavy hitters, the really big films like Doctor Strange 2, grossing nearly $1 billion, which was, I do like that movie. I really did enjoy Doctor Strange. Saw that one in the theater. Thought it was good. Thought it was really good. And then, of course, you have No Way Home, which was probably the standout film, post Endgame, grossing nearly $2 billion without a Chinese release, which is insane because China's the second biggest market outside the U.S. But, the story was there for Spider-Man. The characters were there. It was history of the villains, the heroes. It made sense, right? So I still like MCU. I'm gonna see where they go. I'm not one of these people that just is gonna trash the MCU and hate on it. Although there are some things that I can't stand about the MCU. Like Thor 4. It's like to me that was a point where it's like they just proved to me that like they don't care as much because they just put that movie out and I mean, they really didn't care. Feige just said, Taika, do whatever you want with this film, and Taika just like he just went nuts. Even Chris Hemsworth came out and said, it was just too goofy at times. He said we had too much fun with it. And now Patrick Stewart has come out recently saying that he didn't enjoy his time in Doctor Strange 2 because it was his character, Professor X, but then it wasn't. Also, because it was like a variant that nobody really knew, but most people watching are going to think, okay, this is the same Professor X from the other X-Men films, but he's in the yellow chair. So is this him or is it not him? They didn't make it clear. Not that he had a big role anyway, but the point of this is they're just kind of lacking direction right now. They've gotten so much like backlash from the fans, and which is fine because they're listening to the fans. You know what I mean? I'm against toxic fandom where you just criticize and nitpick at every little thing, or oh, it's woke. Oh, it's MCU because there's more women now. I mean, I'm not no. I A valid criticism is fine, but I don't buy into the whole oh, it's woke. Oh, it's MCU. No. I don't buy into that because I mean, for one, there's nothing wrong with female heroes. Female heroes are fine. I don't believe they're going full on like anti-man. I don't really believe that. They're just going to like try to minimize every man just to elevate the women. They haven't done that thus far. Black Panther 2 was an all-female cast basically, and I loved it. It wasn't a feminist agenda. Marvel's was all female, but I don't know. I don't think it was like a feminist agenda necessarily. But hey, I mean, maybe I'm not best qualified to speak on that because technically I have not seen the Marvels yet. So I have to give that one a watch when it comes to Disney Plus. But it's fine to have female characters. That's not an issue to most people. Um, the thing is, just make sure that the characters are comic accurate, like their look, their personality, their traits, their strength, their weaknesses, internal issues that they deal with. Just keep everything pretty similar, and people are going to flock to the MCU again. I think the big question is X-Men and Fantastic Four. I think that's going to be the defining factor in the equation, because if you got the X-Men, which is the most famous Marvel superhero team of all time, right? Because X-Men was like way more popular when I was growing up in like the 90s. I mean, there was like one Avengers show when I was younger that was on like Disney XD, which I don't even remember really. It was the one with Wonder Man when he was like one of the original members, which I probably watched like one episode when I was a kid. And then I didn't really watch a lot of it. Avengers didn't really take off until the MCU. Then they made the cartoons, Avengers Assemble. Earth's Mightiest Heroes came first, and then Avengers Assemble, which are both pretty good shows. But back in the day, Avengers weren't very popular. And then, of course, Fantastic Four. Fantastic Four was always so popular back in the day. There were tons of Fantastic Four shows. And then, of course, they got popularity even more because of the films. But I think that's got to be your foundation for the MCU. It's got to be built around. I feel like Reed Richards and Doctor Strange should be kind of like the central figures this time. I feel like that would be an appropriate transition from Captain America and Iron Man. Those two worked well. They played off each other very well. The soldier from the past, very old school, very honorable, chivalrous, and then into the modern day where you have this billionaire tech genius who's just very arrogant, self-absorbed. They played off each other well. Eventually, he totally changed and became this likable guy. But I think if you have Reed Richards, who's this great scientific mind, he has PhDs in like nearly any field you can think of, like chemistry, robotics, physics, astrophysics. Hell, I don't know. He's a certified genius, the smartest man in the world. You know, well, not just in the world, like in Marvel's like their entire universe. He's just one of the most intelligent people, and he is just a human technically. And then I think that in relation to Doctor Strange, who maybe is not obviously well versed on technology and things like that, but he is a master of the mystic arts, so he is a genius level intellect as far as mystic arts go and sorcery and magic. And having Doctor Strange being the master of sorcery in relation to this guy who is very focused on technology and science and engineering and all these other things, where he can specifically point to scientific fields and see, okay, how this field of study was developed with theories coming up, and then testing their hypothesis, making theories, designing experiments, in all these different scientific fields. So you have the science master versus the sorcery master, and I think Reed would find it hard to comprehend, how magic works, because it's not something tangible he can point to in science. Like, okay, well, how are you doing that? Like, what type of mechanisms are you using? It's something he wouldn't really be able to understand. So I think that would be something really cool. That's like an angle that they could really lean into, and that could be something really cool. It would give the MCU like kind of this like revitalization if you had the Fantastic Four with Doctor Strange, and then building up the other Avengers around him, or around those two. At least that's kind of the way I think of it. So, do I still like MCU? Yes, I still like MCU. This video was way longer than I wanted it to be, but those are my thoughts about the MCU, the current state, and well, hopefully there's a positive future for the MCU. So let me know what you guys think and comment down below.